Commander Jake Morrison stared at the view screen as his ship USS Horizon drifted through the darkness of space near Kepler 442. The stars looked different out here, so far from Earth that home was just another point of light among billions. His crew had been traveling for 8 months, the first humans to venture this deep into unknown space. The mission was simple: explore, map, and report back to Earth about what they found. Lisa Carter sat at the pilot controls, her hands steady, despite the long journey. She had flown every type of spacecraft Earth had ever built, but nothing prepared her for the isolation of deep space. Behind her, Marcus Bennett worked at the engineering station, monitoring the fusion reactor that kept them alive in the cold void. Amy Rodriguez operated the communications array, listening for any signs of intelligent life. The Horizon was not a warship. Earth had built it for exploration, equipped with sensors and scientific equipment rather than weapons. The only defensive systems were basic shields and a single particle beam meant for clearing space debris. Jake never expected to need anything more dangerous than that. Amy suddenly looked up from her station, her face pale. She had detected something massive approaching from the far side of the system. The object was huge, easily 10 times larger than their ship, and it was moving toward them with purpose. Jake ordered Lisa to change course, but the alien vessel altered its trajectory to intercept them. The first communication came as a harsh series of clicks and growls that made no sense to human ears. Amy worked frantically to establish a translation protocol while Marcus powered up their shields. The alien ship was now close enough that they could see its dark hull covered in strange markings and weapon ports that looked like open mouths. High Admiral Zethkar commanded the Valorian flagship from his throne at the center of the bridge. The massive alien stood nearly 8 feet tall, his scaled hide bearing the scars of countless battles. The Valorians had ruled this sector of space for 3,000 years, crushing any species that dared to challenge their authority. They were apex predators, evolved from hunters that had dominated their homeworld for millions of years. When the Valorian sensors detected the small human ship, Zethkar felt only mild curiosity. The vessel was primitive by Valorian standards, barely capable of faster-than-light travel. Its crew would make suitable slaves after proper conditioning. He ordered his ship to close with the humans and prepare boarding parties. The translation system finally worked, and Jake found himself talking to something that looked like a cross between a dragon and a shark. Zethkar spoke in broken but understandable English, demanding that the humans surrender their ship and submit to Valorian authority. He explained that their species would be evaluated for usefulness to the Empire. Those found worthy would serve as laborers. The rest would be eliminated. Jake tried diplomacy first, explaining that humans meant no harm and only wanted to explore peacefully. Zethkar laughed, a sound like grinding metal that made the human crew shudder. He told Jake that the galaxy belonged to the strong, and humans were clearly weak. Their small ship and primitive technology proved they were not worthy of freedom. The Valorian boarding pods launched while Zethkar was still talking. Lisa tried to evade them, but the human ship was too slow and the alien vessels too fast. Marcus reported that the Valorian pods were cutting through their hull in 3 different locations. Armed aliens would be aboard their ship within minutes. Jake looked at his crew and saw his own thoughts reflected in their faces. They all knew what awaited them if they surrendered: slavery at best, death at worst. The Valorians had made it clear they viewed humans as nothing more than useful animals to be broken and trained. Amy was the first to speak, her voice steady despite her fear. She said she would rather die free than live as a slave. Lisa nodded. Agreement, her pilot training having taught her that some things were worse than death. Marcus was already moving toward the engineering section, understanding what needed to be done without being told. Jake made the decision that would change everything between humans and the galaxy. Instead of surrendering, he ordered Marcus to overload the fusion reactor. The engineer worked quickly, bypassing every safety system while Lisa programmed the ship's autopilot for a collision course with the Valorian flagship's docking bay. The Valorian boarding parties had just breached the human ship when Jake activated the final sequence. He opened communications one last time and spoke directly to Zethkar. He told the alien admiral that humans would never bow to any empire, no matter how powerful. He said that Earth would learn of this encounter and know that somewhere in the galaxy, enemies waited for them. But he also promised that humanity would not run or hide from that threat. The USS Horizon accelerated toward the Valorian flagship, with its reactor approaching critical overload. Zethkar screamed orders to his crew, but it was too late to avoid the collision. The human ship struck the alien vessel's docking bay and exploded with the force of a small star. The blast tore through multiple decks of the Valorian flagship, killing hundreds and crippling the massive warship. As the explosion faded, the few surviving Valorians tried to understand what had just happened. They had encountered thousands of species in their rise to galactic dominance, but none had ever chosen mutual destruction over surrender. The humans had died, but their final transmission was already racing toward Earth, carrying a warning that would change the course of galactic history forever. Captain Ryan Phillips received the final transmission from USS Horizon, while his reconnaissance ship Endeavour hung in the shadow of a distant asteroid. He had been ordered to observe the first contact mission from a safe distance, ready to return to Earth with news of humanity's expansion into deep space. Instead, he watched in horror as his fellow humans chose death over slavery. The explosion that destroyed both ships lit up the darkness like a new star. Ryan recorded everything, knowing that Earth needed to see what had happened. The alien vessel that survived the blast was clearly damaged, listing through space with fires burning along its hull. But it was still functional, still dangerous, and still proof that humanity was not alone in the galaxy. Ryan ordered his crew to maintain silent running as they gathered intelligence about the alien survivors. The massive warship was unlike anything human engineers had ever imagined, built with technology that seemed decades ahead of Earth's capabilities. Worse, the ship's design suggested it was built for war, covered in weapon systems that could probably destroy entire cities. The journey back to Earth took 6 months, but Ryan pushed his engines harder than safety protocols recommended. Every day of delay might mean the aliens were preparing to attack Earth. He sent priority transmissions ahead of his arrival, warning Earth's governments that first contact had gone terribly wrong and that humanity needed to prepare for the worst. President Helen Foster received the news in her office at the United Earth Council headquarters. The recording of Jake Morrison's final transmission played 3 times before she could fully process what she was seeing. 4 brave humans had died rather than surrender to alien masters, and their sacrifice had revealed a threat that could destroy human civilization. Helen immediately convened an emergency session of the council. Representatives from every nation on Earth gathered to watch the recordings and hear Ryan Phillips's first-hand account of the encounter. The debates that followed were intense but brief. Every leader understood that humanity faced an existential crisis that required unprecedented cooperation. Dr. Nathan Cross had been working on theoretical weapons for the Earth Defense Force when the emergency authorization came through. Suddenly, his modest research budget became unlimited, and every resource on Earth was made available to his team. The brilliant scientist had spent years dreaming of technologies that pushed the boundaries of physics, but he never imagined he would have the chance to build them. Dr. Emma Walsh joined Nathan's team within days of the announcement. Her expertise in quantum mechanics and particle physics made her invaluable as they began designing weapons that could level the playing field against superior alien technology. Dr. Carlos Mendez brought his knowledge of fusion reactions and energy manipulation, understanding that humanity needed power sources capable of fueling their desperate innovations. Admiral Kevin Stone took command of Earth's military response with grim determination. The career officer had spent decades preparing for threats that might never come, but the alien menace was real and immediate. He began reorganizing every military force on Earth into a single unified command structure capable of defending the planet and taking the fight to the enemy. Colonel Sandra Hayes became Kevin's chief of staff, helping coordinate the massive mobilization effort. Her experience in special operations made her perfect for training the new type of soldiers humanity would need. These warriors would not fight conventional battles against conventional enemies. They would face aliens with superior technology and unknown capabilities. Major Tim Johnson led the first training programs for what they called the Earth Defense Corps. Veterans from every military on the planet volunteered for the program, knowing they were preparing for a war unlike anything in human history. The training was brutal, designed to prepare soldiers for combat in space and against enemies that might not follow human rules of warfare. Meanwhile, the industrial might of Earth underwent rapid transformation. Factories that once built cars, and computers were retooled to produce weapons and spacecraft. Mining operations expanded into the asteroid belt, harvesting raw materials needed for the massive construction projects. Entire cities were built underground, protected from potential alien bombardment. Ryan Phillips found himself promoted to Commodore and given command of the new reconnaissance fleet. His experience with the aliens made him invaluable for training other crews in stealth operations and intelligence gathering. The ships under his command were designed to be invisible to alien sensors, capable of observing enemy movements without being detected. Dr. Nathan Cross made his first breakthrough 3 months after the Horizon incident. Working with his team, around the clock, he developed quantum disruption technology that could tear apart matter at the molecular level. The weapons were still experimental, but early tests showed they could penetrate any known type of armor or shielding. Emma Walsh perfected the targeting systems that would guide Nathan's quantum weapons. Her innovations allowed the weapons to lock onto enemy ships from impossible distances and strike with pinpoint accuracy. But more importantly, she began developing countermeasures against alien technology, studying the recordings of the Valorian ship to understand its weaknesses. The Valorian Empire, meanwhile, was conducting its own analysis of the encounter. Admiral Zethkar had survived the explosion that killed his crew, and his reports to the Empire were disturbing. The humans had demonstrated a willingness to die rather than submit, something the Valorians had never encountered before. Probe ships were dispatched to observe Earth from a safe distance. The Valorian scouts expected to find a frightened civilization preparing for surrender or evacuation. Instead, they discovered a planet transforming itself into a fortress. Human industrial activity had increased by orders of magnitude, and the electromagnetic signatures suggested massive weapons development programs. Emperor Vex Thul of the Valorian Empire read the probe reports with growing concern. The humans were not behaving like a typical inferior species. Most conquered races either submitted immediately or fought hopeless defensive battles before being crushed. But the humans appeared to be preparing for offensive operations as if they believed they could actually win a war against the Empire. The Emperor ordered additional probe missions and authorized the construction of a full invasion fleet. If the humans wanted to fight, the Valorians would teach them the futility of resistance. But privately, Vex Thul wondered why a species that had just learned of alien life would choose aggression over diplomacy. The answer to that question would come sooner than he expected. President Helen Foster addressed the world 6 months after first contact, speaking to every human on Earth through emergency broadcasts. She told them that humanity stood at a crossroads between freedom and slavery, between independence and extinction. But she also promised that Earth would not face this threat alone or unprepared. Humanity would meet its enemies with weapons they could never imagine and tactics they could never predict. The transformation was complete. In less than a year, humanity had evolved from peaceful explorers to something far more dangerous. The aliens had expected to find easy prey, but they had awakened something that would make them regret their arrogance forever. Dr. Nathan Cross stood before the assembled Earth Defense Council, a prototype quantum disruption missile hovering in a containment field behind him. The weapon looked deceptively simple, like a metallic cylinder covered in glowing circuits, but the physics contained within could reshape matter at the subatomic level. The first test had vaporized an entire asteroid in seconds, leaving behind only a cloud of free-floating particles. Emma Walsh worked beside Nathan, her fingers dancing, across holographic displays that showed the weapon's targeting matrix. She had solved the problem of quantum entanglement at combat ranges, allowing the missiles to lock onto enemy ships regardless of their speed or evasive maneuvers. But more importantly, she had designed the weapons to cause maximum psychological impact on any survivors. Dr. Carlos Mendez presented the power source that made the quantum weapons possible. His fusion cores were smaller and more efficient than anything previously built, capable of generating the massive energy requirements needed to disrupt matter at the quantum level. The cores were also designed with a deliberate weakness, programmed to overload catastrophically if tampered with by alien technology. Patricia Lee unveiled the delivery systems that would carry the quantum weapons into battle. Her missile designs incorporated stealth technology that made them invisible to conventional sensors, while their guidance systems could navigate through the most complex defensive networks. But the missiles also carried a special payload designed to terrify any enemy that encountered them. Admiral Kevin Stone listened to the presentations with satisfaction, knowing that humanity was developing weapons that would level the playing field against superior alien technology. But he also understood that winning battles would not be enough. Earth needed to send a message that would prevent future invasions, and that message had to be written in a language the aliens would understand. The Pandora Protocols emerged from a secret meeting between the top scientists and military leaders. The project went far beyond conventional weapons development, focusing instead on psychological warfare and terror tactics. The goal was not just to defeat alien forces, but to make them afraid to ever approach human space again. Greg Thompson led the Biological Warfare Division, developing agents specifically designed to target alien physiology. Using data gathered from the Valorian ship wreckage, his team created viruses and bacteria that could infiltrate alien life support systems and spread through entire crews. The biological agents were designed to be non-lethal but extremely debilitating, causing hallucinations and paranoia that would make alien soldiers unreliable in combat. The nanobotic warfare program was even more ambitious. Microscopic robots could infiltrate any electronic system, turning alien technology against its users. The nanobots were programmed to remain dormant until activated by specific signals, allowing them to spread through entire fleets before revealing their presence. Once active, they could cause weapons to malfunction, life support to fail, or navigation systems to send ships into stars. Captain Ryan Phillips received the first combat-ready ship equipped with the new weapons. The USS Defiance was unlike any vessel ever built by human hands, incorporating technologies that had been theoretical just months before. The ship's quantum disruption arrays could tear apart enemy vessels in ways that violated everything the aliens understood about physics. Nicole Anderson served as tactical officer aboard the Defiance. Her training focused on the psychological aspects of combat. She understood that every battle was an opportunity to demonstrate human capabilities to alien observers. Her job was to ensure that any surviving enemies would carry tales of impossible weapons and incomprehensible tactics back to their commanders. Alex Turner commanded the weapons systems that would test humanity's new arsenal in actual combat. The veteran soldier had volunteered for the most dangerous assignment in human history, knowing that his actions would determine whether Earth survived or fell to alien conquest. His weapon systems included not just quantum disruption missiles, but psychological warfare tools designed to break enemy morale. The test came when Valorian scouts were detected near Jupiter. The alien ships were conducting reconnaissance, mapping human defenses, and gathering intelligence for the inevitable invasion. Admiral Kevin Stone authorized Operation Nightmare, the first combat deployment of humanity's secret weapons. Captain Ryan Phillips took the Defiance into battle with a crew that understood they were making history. The engagement began when they detected 3 Valorian scout ships hiding in Jupiter's radiation belt. The aliens probably thought they were safe, protected by electromagnetic interference that would confuse primitive human sensors. The quantum disruption missiles launched, without warning, their stealth systems making them invisible to Valorian detection equipment. The first missile struck the lead scout ship and did something that should have been impossible. Instead of exploding, the weapon caused the alien vessel to implode, its hull folding in on itself as the quantum field disrupted the bonds holding its atoms together. The second Valorian ship tried to flee, but Nicole Anderson had anticipated the maneuver. The tactical officer activated the nanobotic payload hidden in the first missile's debris field. Microscopic robots infected the fleeing ship's systems, causing its engines to fire in random directions and its weapons to target its own hull, Alex. Turner saved the most devastating weapon for the third scout ship. His quantum disruption array locked onto the vessel and fired a sustained beam that caused reality itself to break down around the target. The alien ship began aging rapidly, its hull corroding, and its systems failing as entropy accelerated within. The quantum field. The surviving Valorians managed to send a desperate transmission before their ships were destroyed. The message was filled with panic and confusion, describing weapons that seemed to mock the laws of physics. The alien survivors spoke of human technology that could turn matter inside out, machines that could think and act independently, and energy fields that made time itself unstable. Admiral Kevin Stone reviewed the battle recordings with grim satisfaction. The engagement had lasted less than 10 minutes, but the psychological impact would be far greater than any conventional victory. The Valorian scouts had witnessed something impossible, and their reports would spread fear throughout the alien empire. Dr. Nathan Cross was already working on even more terrifying weapons. His next project involved quantum entanglement on a massive scale, creating weapons that could strike targets across interstellar distances. The theoretical mathematics suggested that space and time could be weaponized, turning the very fabric of reality into a tool of war. Emma Walsh developed targeting systems that could lock onto enemy ships through hyperspace, making it impossible for alien forces to hide or retreat. Her quantum sensors could detect spacecraft that existed partially outside normal spacetime, giving human forces unprecedented tactical advantages. The Valorian Empire received the scout reports with disbelief that quickly turned to fear. The humans had demonstrated technology that was centuries ahead of what their industrial capacity should have been able to produce. Worse, they had shown a willingness to use weapons that most civilized species would consider too dangerous to. Emperor Vex Thule convened his war council to discuss the human threat. The assembled admirals and scientists struggled to understand how a species that had just achieved interstellar flight could develop such advanced weapons. Some suggested that the humans had allied with unknown alien forces, while others theorized that they had discovered ancient technology left behind by a vanished civilization. The truth was far more terrifying than any of their theories. Humanity had not found advanced weapons or received alien assistance. They had simply done what humans always did when faced with an existential threat. They had innovated, adapted, and created solutions that no rational species would ever attempt. The Valorians were about to discover that human imagination combined with desperation could produce weapons that exceeded their worst nightmares. Admiral Kevin Stone stood on the bridge of his flagship USS Retribution, watching the final preparations for humanity's first offensive operation against the Valorian Empire. The massive warship represented everything Earth had learned about warfare in the months since first contact, equipped with weapons that pushed the boundaries of known science and tactics that no alien species had ever encountered. Vice Admiral Rachel Green coordinated the fleet movements from her position at the tactical display. The brilliant strategist had spent her career studying asymmetric warfare, but nothing had prepared her for planning battles against technologically superior aliens. Her solution was to abandon conventional tactics entirely, focusing instead on psychological warfare and terror operations. Colonel Peter Davis commanded the Terror Troopers, an elite unit equipped with powered armor that made them nearly unstoppable. In close combat, the soldiers under his command were volunteers who understood that their mission was not just to win battles, but to break the enemy's will to fight. Their armor incorporated technology that was designed to be as frightening as it was effective. The human fleet consisted of 12 advanced warships, each one specialized for a different type of warfare. Captain Monica Bell commanded the Stealth, destroyer USS Phantom, a vessel that could become completely invisible to all known detection methods. Her ship was designed for infiltration and sabotage, capable of striking targets from within heavily defended systems. Captain Steve Rogers led the carrier USS Valkyrie, which launched fighter squadrons that seemed to violate the laws of physics. The small craft could exist in multiple locations simultaneously, making them impossible to target with conventional weapons. The psychological effect on enemy pilots was devastating, as they found themselves fighting opponents that appeared to be everywhere at once. The fleet's first target was not a military installation, but a Valorian mining colony in the Outer Rim. Territories. Admiral Kevin Stone had chosen the target carefully, knowing that attacking civilian infrastructure would force the aliens to spread their defenses thin. More importantly, it would demonstrate that humans could strike anywhere in Valorian space without warning. Lieutenant Danny Park served as infiltration specialist aboard the USS Phantom, his expertise in alien technology allowing the ship to penetrate enemy security networks. Working with Chief Engineer Katie Mills, he had developed methods for turning Valorian systems against their users. Their techniques went far beyond simple sabotage, creating cascading failures that would spread panic throughout entire facilities. The attack began when Captain Monica Bell's ship materialized inside the mining colony's defense grid, having bypassed all sensor networks through quantum stealth technology. The Phantom's weapons did not simply destroy the facility's infrastructure. Instead, they converted the mining equipment into weapons that turned against the Valorian workers. The quantum disruption charges placed by Danny Park caused the colony's fusion reactors to become unstable, but not in ways that the alien engineers could understand or predict. The reactors began producing energy that existed partially outside normal space-time, creating fields of distorted reality that made rescue operations impossible. Katie Mills activated the nanobotic swarms that had been deployed throughout the facility. The microscopic robots did not just disable Valorian equipment. They turned the colony's automated systems into a nightmare of malfunctioning machinery that seemed to act with malevolent intelligence. Life support systems began playing recordings of human voices speaking in languages that should not have existed. The few Valorian survivors who managed to escape the colony carried tales that spread terror throughout the Empire. They described mining equipment that had come alive and turned against its operators, fusion reactors that had begun warping space and time, and automated systems that had started broadcasting messages from the dead. Captain Steve Rogers launched his fighter squadrons against a Valorian trading post 3 systems away, demonstrating humanity's ability to coordinate attacks across vast distances. The pilots under his command flew craft that incorporated quantum entanglement technology, allowing them to exist in multiple locations simultaneously. Lieutenant Commander Ashley White led the first wave of fighters, her squadron appearing to attack from 6 different directions at once. The Valorian defenders found themselves targeting enemies that vanished the moment they were fired upon, only to reappear in completely different locations. The psychological stress of fighting impossible opponents caused many alien pilots to abandon their posts. Major Chris Turner commanded the second wave, which deployed weapons that turned the trading post's own defensive systems against the facility. His fighters did not carry traditional missiles or energy weapons. Instead, they deployed quantum viruses that infected the station's computer networks and caused them to interpret their own personnel as hostile targets. The Valorian defenders watched in horror as their own defense grid began firing on evacuation ships, while their communication systems started broadcasting human propaganda that spoke of inevitable conquest and the futility of resistance. The trading post fell without the human fighters firing a single conventional weapon. War leader Kexton received reports of the human attacks with growing alarm. The massive Valorian commander had never known defeat in 3 decades of military service, but the human tactics were unlike anything in his experience. His enemies seemed to be fighting a completely different type of war, one where conventional military doctrine was meaningless. The war leader assembled a fleet of over 200 warships to hunt down the human raiders. His vessels represented the finest military technology the Valorian Empire could produce, equipped with weapons that could shatter planets and shields that had never been penetrated. He was confident that sheer firepower would overcome whatever tricks the humans might employ. Admiral Kevin Stone allowed his fleet to be discovered near the Valorian border system of Zerion's Gate. The human commander wanted a decisive battle that would demonstrate Earth's capabilities to the entire galaxy. He had chosen the location carefully, knowing that the system's unique gravitational fields would amplify the psychological impact of his weapons. Rachel Green coordinated the fleets, positioning to take advantage of the quantum field generators that Dr. Nathan Cross had installed throughout the system. The devices would allow human ships to manipulate space and time in localized areas, creating tactical advantages that no enemy could predict or counter. Peter Davis prepared his terror troopers for boarding operations that would turn captured alien vessels into weapons of psychological warfare. His soldiers were equipped with nanobotic dispensers that could convert entire ships into horror shows designed to break enemy morale. The colonel understood that fear was often more effective than firepower. When war leader Kexton's massive fleet arrived at Zerion's Gate, he expected to find a small human force that he could easily overwhelm. Instead, he discovered that the humans had turned the entire star system into a weapon. The very fabric of space-time had been altered, creating zones where the laws of physics no longer applied in predictable ways. The battle that followed would become known throughout the galaxy as the day reality itself went to war. Human weapons did not simply destroy Valorian ships. They transformed them into impossible geometries that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, created temporal loops that trapped enemy crews in endless cycles of terror, and generated fields of entropy that aged entire fleets to dust in seconds. Monica Bell's stealth operations had planted quantum seeds throughout the Valorian fleet before the battle began. When activated, these devices caused enemy ships to phase in and out of normal space-time, making it impossible for the aliens to coordinate their attacks or retreat to safety. Steve Rogers' fighter squadrons did not engage in traditional dogfights. Instead, they deployed quantum entanglement nets that linked enemy ships together in impossible ways. Valorian vessels found themselves sharing the same physical space, their hulls occupying identical coordinates while somehow remaining intact. The psychological impact was devastating. Valorian crews reported that their instruments showed impossible readings, their weapons fired backwards through time, and their communication systems received messages from versions of themselves that existed in parallel dimensions. Many alien soldiers simply collapsed from the mental strain of trying to process what they were experiencing. War leader Kexton watched his invincible fleet torn apart by weapons that seemed to mock the very concept of warfare. His tactical displays showed his ships being destroyed by forces that his instruments insisted could not exist. The proud Valorian commander realized that he was not fighting a military engagement, but witnessing the death of everything he understood about the universe. The Battle of Zerion's Gate reached its climax when Dr. Nathan Cross activated the reality bomb from his command bunker deep beneath Earth's surface. The weapon existed only in theory until that moment, a device that could temporarily suspend the fundamental laws of physics in localized areas of space. The effect was instantaneous and terrifying, creating zones where cause and effect became meaningless. War leader Kexton watched his flagship's instruments register impossible readings as space-time began to buckle around the human fleet. Valorian. Ships that had been retreating suddenly found themselves advancing toward the enemy, their engines propelling them in directions that did not exist on any navigation chart. The massive alien commander had fought countless battles across the galaxy, but nothing had prepared him for warfare that violated reality itself. Captain Steve Rogers coordinated the fighter attack that would become legendary throughout alien space. His pilots flew craft that had been modified with quantum displacement drives, allowing them to exist in multiple locations simultaneously. The psychological impact on Valorian fighter pilots was immediate and devastating, as they found themselves engaged in combat with enemies that appeared to be everywhere and nowhere at once. Lieutenant Commander Ashley White led her squadron through attack patterns that defied three-dimensional thinking. Her fighters could phase through solid matter, attack from inside enemy ships, and retreat through dimensions that Valorian sensors could not detect. The alien pilots reported engaging human craft that fired weapons backwards through time, hitting targets before the triggers were pulled. Major Chris Turner commanded the bomber wing that deployed the entropy weapons Emma Walsh had perfected. These devices did not simply destroy Valorian ships, but caused them to age rapidly, their hulls corroding and their systems failing as millions of years passed in seconds. Entire squadrons of alien fighters simply crumbled to dust, their pilots experiencing lifetimes of decay in moments. Colonel Peter Davis launched his terror troopers in boarding pods that phased through Valorian shields as if they did not exist. The elite soldiers wore powered armor that incorporated psychological warfare systems designed by Earth's best minds. Their suits projected fear-inducing frequencies that drove alien defenders to panic, while their weapons turned captured ships into nightmare landscapes. The terror troopers did not simply board enemy vessels to destroy them. They converted Valorian ships into weapons of horror that would attack their own fleets. Using nanobotic swarms developed by Katie Mills, the soldiers transformed alien technology into malevolent entities that seemed to act with twisted intelligence. Danny Park coordinated the electronic warfare that turned the Valorian fleet's communication systems against them. Human quantum viruses infected alien networks, broadcasting messages that claimed to come from dead crew members and displaying tactical information that showed impossible ship configurations. The psychological stress caused many Valorian commanders to issue contradictory orders that resulted in friendly fire incidents. Admiral Kevin Stone observed the battle from his flagship's bridge, watching as centuries of Valorian military doctrine crumbled before weapons that redefined the concept of warfare. The human commander understood that this engagement was about more than military victory. It was about sending a message that would echo across the galaxy for generations. Vice Admiral Rachel Green managed the tactical coordination that made the impossible battle possible. Her strategies incorporated probability manipulation and temporal displacement, allowing human forces to attack enemy ships that existed in multiple time streams simultaneously. The Valorian fleet found itself fighting battles in the past, present, and future all at once. The quantum field generators that Nathan Cross had hidden throughout the Xerion system activated in sequence, creating reality distortion zones that trapped Valorian ships in pockets of altered space-time. Some enemy vessels found themselves moving backwards through their own timeline, undoing their own actions in endless loops that drove their crews to madness. War leader Kexton attempted to coordinate a retreat, but his ships could not escape from battlefields that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The Valorian commander watched his tactical displays show fleet configurations that violated basic geometry, with ships occupying the same coordinates while somehow remaining separate entities. Monica Bell's stealth destroyer USS Phantom materialized inside the Valorian flagship's bridge, having phased through multiple decks of armor plating. The impossible appearance of an enemy vessel in the most protected area of his ship finally broke Kexton's composure. The proud warrior who had conquered dozens of worlds found himself face to face with humans who treated the impossible as routine. The terror troopers that boarded Kexton's flagship did not attempt to capture or kill the alien commander. Instead, they deployed nanobotic swarms that converted the ship's life support systems into instruments of psychological torture. The air began carrying voices of dead Valorian soldiers, while the walls displayed images of battles that had never happened but felt completely real. Peter Davis himself confronted war leader Kexton in the flagship's command center, his powered armor making him appear more like a demon than a soldier. The colonel did not threaten the alien commander with death, but with something far worse. He explained that the Valorian fleet would be allowed to survive so that they could carry word of human capabilities back to their empire. The few Valorian ships that escaped Zerion's Gate were deliberately chosen by Admiral Stone for their communication capabilities. The human commander wanted specific witnesses to survive, aliens who would spread the most terrifying possible accounts of the battle. The surviving crews carried tales of weapons that turned reality inside out, and soldiers who fought like creatures from nightmares. Captain Rogers' fighters escorted the fleeing Valorian vessels to the edge of the system, not to ensure their destruction, but to guarantee their escape. The human pilots transmitted final messages to the alien survivors, promising that worse weapons awaited any species that threatened Earth. The psychological warfare continued even after the battle ended. The aftermath of Zerion's Gate sent shockwaves through Valorian space that reached every corner of their empire within days. The accounts of surviving soldiers described humans who could manipulate time and space, weapons that violated the fundamental laws of physics, and tactics that turned warfare itself into a form of incomprehensible art. War leader Kexton returned to the Valorian capital as a broken commander, his reports dismissed as impossible until they were corroborated by hundreds of other survivors. The proud military leader who had never known defeat found himself trying to explain how humans had turned his invincible fleet into victims of their own reality. Emperor Vexthul received the battle reports with growing horror, unable to comprehend how a species that had achieved interstellar travel only recently could develop weapons that exceeded Valorian understanding. The Emperor's military advisors struggled to develop countermeasures against enemies who seemed to fight by completely different rules. Dr. Nathan Cross was already developing even more devastating weapons in his laboratories beneath Earth's surface. The reality bomb had been only the first test of technologies that could weaponize the fundamental forces of the universe. His next project involved quantum entanglement on a galactic scale, creating weapons that could strike targets across impossible distances. Emma Walsh perfected targeting systems that could lock onto enemy ships that existed in parallel dimensions, making it impossible for alien forces to hide in any reality that humans could theoretically access. Her quantum sensors could detect spacecraft that had never been built but might exist in alternate timelines. The Battle of Zerion's Gate marked the moment when humanity stopped being seen as an emerging threat and became recognized as something far more dangerous. The surviving Valorians carried word throughout the galaxy that Earth had developed weapons that turned science fiction into terrifying reality, and that humans fought wars in ways that no rational species would ever attempt. The Valorian Empire began to collapse within weeks of the Battle of Zerion's Gate, as entire star systems refused to contribute forces to a war against an enemy that seemed to violate the basic laws of reality. Emperor Vexthul watched his once mighty domain fragment as reports of impossible human weapons spread panic throughout his territories. The proud civilization that had ruled this sector for millennia was learning what it meant to be truly afraid. News of humanity's victory traveled faster than the surviving Valorian ships, carried by intercepted communications and the whispered fears of alien traders who had heard the impossible stories. The crystalline hegemony received detailed reports of weapons that could age entire fleets to dust in seconds, while the Void Hunters learned of human soldiers who could phase through solid matter and turn captured ships into instruments of terror. The Ancient Collective, a confederation of species that had existed since before recorded history, convened an emergency session to discuss the human threat. Their most experienced military analysts struggled to understand how a species that had achieved faster-than-light travel only recently could develop technologies that seemed to come from science fiction rather than any known scientific principles. President Helen Foster addressed the galaxy through captured alien communication networks, her image appearing on screens throughout dozens of star systems. The leader of humanity spoke with calm authority that somehow made her words even more terrifying than angry threats would have been. She explained that Earth wanted nothing more than to be left alone to develop in peace. The president's message was simple, but carried implications that chilled every alien leader who heard it. She stated that humanity had no interest in conquest or empire building, but that any species threatening Earth would discover that humans had turned warfare itself into an art form beyond alien comprehension. The promise that followed was even more ominous than any declaration of war. Helen Foster concluded her galactic address by explaining that humans did not fight to win battles or capture territory. They fought to eliminate threats permanently, using methods that ensured no enemy would ever consider threatening Earth again. The casual way she described humanity's approach to warfare made it clear that the Valorian Empire had experienced only a small demonstration of human capabilities. Admiral Kevin Stone returned to Earth as humanity's greatest military hero, but he understood that the real work was just beginning. Other alien civilizations would eventually overcome their initial fear and attempt to destroy humanity before human weapons became even more advanced. His job was to ensure that Earth remained ready for threats that might emerge from any corner of the galaxy. Captain Ryan Phillips led new expeditions into alien space, no longer as explorers but as intelligence gatherers mapping potential enemies and strategic targets. His reconnaissance fleets used stealth technology that made them invisible to all known detection methods, allowing them to observe alien civilizations without being discovered. The information they gathered would determine humanity's next moves. Dr. Nathan Cross continued developing weapons that pushed beyond the boundaries of theoretical physics, working with unlimited resources and the best minds Earth could provide. His latest project involved quantum entanglement on a galactic scale, creating devices that could strike targets across impossible distances. The weapons existed only in mathematical models, but the equations suggested they could work. Emma Walsh perfected detection systems that could locate alien ships hiding in parallel dimensions or alternate timelines. Her quantum sensors represented a breakthrough in understanding the fundamental structure of reality, allowing humans to find enemies regardless of where or when they might be hiding. The technology gave Earth unprecedented strategic advantages. The psychological impact of humanity's emergence spread far beyond the former Valorian territories. Alien traders began avoiding shipping routes that passed near human space, while diplomatic missions were canceled by species that had never heard of Earth until recently. The mere knowledge that humans existed somewhere in the galaxy was enough to change the behavior of civilizations across multiple sectors. Captain Yoltin of the Merchant Guild exemplified the new galactic attitude toward humanity when he received a routine shipping contract that required passage near Earth's solar system. The alien trader immediately canceled the agreement, explaining to his confused crew that human space had become an exclusion zone that no rational being would enter voluntarily. The captain's decision was based on reports that had circulated throughout the trading networks, describing human ships conducting mysterious activities in deep space and building massive structures of unknown purpose. Long-range sensors detected construction projects on a scale that dwarfed anything previously seen in the galaxy, but no alien government was willing to send investigation teams close enough to determine their nature. Emperor Vex Thul's Final. act as ruler of the Valorian Empire was to issue a formal surrender to humanity, offering tribute and vassalage in exchange for mercy. The once proud leader who had commanded the largest military force in the sector now begged for terms from a species he had initially dismissed as primitive. The response from Earth was swift and uncompromising. President Foster replied to the Valorian surrender offer through public broadcasts that every alien civilization could intercept. She explained that humanity did not accept surrenders or negotiate with species that had demonstrated hostile intentions toward Earth. The Valorians would be allowed to exist only as long as they remained within their designated territories and posed no threat to human interests. The terms imposed on the Valorian Empire served as an example to every other alien civilization watching the situation develop. Humanity would not conquer territory or enslave populations, but neither would they show mercy to species that had chosen to be enemies. The message was clear. Earth preferred to be left alone, but crossing humans carried consequences that no rational species would risk. Dr. Nathan Cross achieved his greatest breakthrough 6 months after Zarian's Gate, successfully testing a weapon that could manipulate quantum fields across interstellar distances. The device allowed human forces to strike targets in other star systems without deploying ships or personnel, making Earth effectively untouchable while giving humanity the ability to project power anywhere in the galaxy. The weapon's first test involved the complete disintegration of an uninhabited planet in former Valorian space, chosen specifically because it could be observed by alien sensors throughout the sector. The demonstration showed that humans could destroy entire worlds from the safety of their own solar system, using technologies that alien scientists insisted should be impossible. Alien intelligence services attempted to understand how humanity had developed such advanced weapons in such a short time, but their investigations only deepened the mystery. Earth's industrial capacity and scientific infrastructure should not have been capable of producing technologies that exceeded the achievements of civilizations that had existed for thousands of years. The truth was that human innovation had always operated differently from alien scientific development. While other species advanced through careful research and gradual improvements, humans had responded to existential threats with desperate creativity that produced impossible solutions. The combination of human imagination and unlimited resources had created weapons that no logical species would ever attempt to build. Long-range monitoring stations detected human construction projects throughout the solar system, building structures that served unknown purposes but were clearly designed for warfare on a galactic scale. The project suggested that Earth was preparing for conflicts that might not occur for decades or centuries, demonstrating the kind of long-term strategic thinking that terrified alien military planners. The final Valorian intelligence report, filed before their empire's complete dissolution, contained a single recommendation that would influence alien policy toward humanity for generations. The report classified all human space as a permanent exclusion zone and advised that any species encountering humans should withdraw immediately rather than risk engagement. The recommendation was based on evidence that humanity possessed weapons, capable of violating fundamental laws of physics and tactics that turned conventional warfare into psychological torture. The report concluded that survival probability for any species engaging humans in conflict was effectively zero, regardless of technological advantages or numerical superiority. As the story reached its conclusion, the galaxy had fundamentally changed from what it had been before humanity's emergence. Species that had dominated their regions for millennia now looked over their shoulders, wondering if the humans were watching them and whether they might be perceived as threats. The age of alien empires built on military conquest had ended the day humanity decided to show the galaxy what true warfare looked like. Captain Yoltin's final log entry summarized the new reality that every alien in the galaxy now faced. He wrote that the humans had become something unprecedented in galactic history, a species that other civilizations whispered about in the dark, not because they conquered territory or enslaved populations,